Welcome to Convicted Patriot, your source for common sense conservative values from an independent American. Today is January the 18th, 2026. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Christian Russ. I'm going to ask you to please just sit still for a few minutes and hear me out. And I know I ramble a lot, and that's just because I'm admittedly an extremely biased and opinionated individual, but I do try to call balls and strikes, and that means if Trump is your Jesus, then I'm also not your guy. Because while I do agree with the majority of what he's done and is doing, when he drops the ball, gotta talk about that too, in detail. I'm just here to give you the facts, the ones that can be backed up, of course, and I tell you how I feel about him in the process, but I mean, ultimately, I want you to make your own decisions, draw your own conclusions. So, today, I want to talk about a few issues that have been more so in the background noise of all the current drama involving the kamikaze Karen incident in Minnesota. So, first off, let's touch on Russia. See, they have recently rewritten their nuclear code so that now that they can bomb countries that are the real head of the proxy wars. Last week alone, they sent hypersonic missiles into Ukraine as a warning, and that needs to end, or our next one is going to be armed with a nuke. And might I add that there's not any technology in existence that can stop a hypersonic missile. Anyway, a top Russian advisor, and I'm probably going to murder this, but his name is Sergei Karaganov. Anyway, Sergei Karaganov has recently came out and said that in a year minimum, 2 years tops, if the war has not been resolved and over with, they will cut the head off the proverbial snake and nuke the UK and Germany. And to understand this, you have to know history behind all of that, and all of that is going on now, of course, and part of that history is how this same advisor, the one that said what I just told you, he said, well, he's foretold exactly what would happen in advance repeatedly. See, Russia is a giant country. It's bigger than China and India put together, okay? Siberia alone is the size of the United States and has a population of only 10 million, where the United States has roughly 350 million. And as a matter of fact, the entire country of Russia is only sitting around about 110 million population-wise, and yet it's loaded with absolutely every natural resource that you can think of, and it's very self-reliant as long as you have the industry and the market. You see, this is no secret. And when the Soviet Union fell, the oligarchs rushed into play. They ran up into Russia and they set up shop. They raped the country of her resources, getting uber wealthy. And in the process, while the brute population had to live off scraps. So when Putin did come into power in the early 2000s, he did expel every single one of the oligarchs out of his country and brought some dignity back to his people. See, these same Russian oligarchs and their heirs, long story short, have managed to embed themselves in the governments of several European countries and are advisors to several presidents. And when that finally happened is when the current regimes in Europe decided they're more entitled to the Russian land and the resources than a measly 110 million people. 110 million brutal Russians. And besides, they're the evil Russians, right? I mean, they're the bad guys, right? Right. See, there's so much more to the story that people don't know, and that includes when Putin basically admitted defeat, so to speak, and I'm sure in his mind, he was hoping that it would all work out, and the idea that the Soviet Union had any influence on the new Russia would go away with this new addition to NATO. That's right. See, Putin asked George Bush to join NATO. Basically, he admitted that the Soviet Union had fell, and that Russia wanted to join a Western alliance. They believed in the West. They wanted to become part of it. Well, he was turned down. And pretty much from that moment on, it seems like the West has done all in its power to push Russia into, reaching and giving them a reason. NATO wasn't supposed to move an inch eastward. And that was according, at least, to the Secretary of State, James Baker. That was in, 1990? And since then, 5 United States presidents have pushed that envelope. Some even adding countries that were part of the former Warsaw Pact. Even so, they're just creeping slower and slower to poke the proverbial bear, hoping that it just eventually, that their uninvited presence would be enough, to cause the bear to wake up and go berserk, which, would justify an even greater response. And if all goes as planned, then the continent-sized country of Russia would be divvied up for the major players and its resources extracted. Yeah, well, the European economy, it's collapsing. Their country's rotting inside out due to the massive third world Muslim illegal invasion. The EU is dissolving. They need this, not only for financial stability, but for any type of sustainable future as a continent. And not for the first or second time, Europe has drugged the United States into its demise. This has been the plan for decades now. And the whole term limit thing, yeah, well, we could use that as an example in this, because the older generation that vividly remembers the Cold War era just cannot seem to let go of the thought of the Soviet Union and how evil it is. They seem to find all of their lives' problems stemming from Russia. So, of course, in 2014, when the West decided to install its own puppet regime in Ukraine, Putin chose to annex Crimea and start backing separatists in the Donbass region. Well, see, naturally, the West answered back with sanctions and armed Ukraine like an octopus. And, of course, then we had the invasion that was basically begged for in 2022. Of course, with the taunting of the NATO membership to a country that the West had control of and just so happens to border Russia, So essentially, a military base with nukes right there. I think that's safe to say it would be detrimental to the national security of Russia. And speaking of national security, the United States also had 46 biolabs in Ukraine, and on more than one occasion, those were brought up by Putin, for the safety of his people, which would be the first affected if anything happened. So, the threat to drop a bomb on the UK and Germany is simply Russia calling it out how it is. They want to get rid of the major players in the war by proxy, which they claim is the vast majority of the evil and moral corruption. That's where it stems from. That's where they claim it comes from Europe. Keir Starmer is, of course, he's a spineless coward that has no business in the position that he is in. Nothing good has happened in or to the UK since he has become his prime minister. And in fact, he's just their younger version of Biden, really. They're just a glimpse into the future for what lies ahead for the US, if we didn't change course or if Democrats get back in power in 2028. And I know that isn't something that most people want to hear, but this is something that I also have to mention because it is a huge thing in this conversation. And that's the fact that AI is the future. See, that can explain the recent taking of Venezuela and the push for Greenland and the stance on Iran with a sprinkle of Ukraine, And now first and foremost, let me say that I'm not advocating for invasions or wars. I think that there is value in human life and that war always takes life away and causes so much suffering. That being said, we have to be the ones to maintain control in this global struggle for power in this current day. I mean, would you rather it be Russia or China? Do you understand the implications if we lost this global power struggle? Whoever has the most advanced artificial intelligence has the biggest gun, so to speak, because that's what warfare has, unfortunately, that's what it's evolved into. I mean, fortunate considering nuclear weapons, which they were the determining factor back in the 40s, 50s. And by the 70s, believe it or not, by the 70s, we had started working on AI. So just imagine today where we really are. They say that the military technology is about 20 years more advanced than the ones that the public gets, or than the technology that the public gets. So just put that in perspective. Let me break this down for you. You had Venezuela, right? It's right in our backyard. And not only did we find their oil to begin with and then set up the infrastructure to drill their oil, but when Maduro came into power in 2006, he pretty much said, fuck you, and just kept our portion indefinitely, costing U.S. oil companies, I think collectively about $20 billion. And to make matters worse, you had China set up shop along with Russia. all using the proceeds from Venezuela to fuel their own agendas. You see, China is trying to corner the AI landscape, and Russia is clearly fighting a war. America is only hanging on to the reserve currency by a thread, people. And wildly enough, we can give that credit to Henry Kissinger circa 72, 73 for kicking off the petrodollar deal with the Saudis. And only due to that fact, over 80% of the world's oil gets traded with the United States currency. Only due to that are we still in power. We're still in control like we are. And that being said, we need that damn oil and we need the petrodollar that comes with it. And not only that, but we need to take it from our enemies, which is precisely what we have done. We have not only destabilized one of their key footholds in our hemisphere, but we have also taken the oil back that was stolen from us long ago and sold to them. We need the energy, and we need to cut off their access to the energy, because with the rise of BRICS nations and their new gold-backed currency they're trying to develop, we're just a fraction of a hair away from our own currency's power being decimated. And with it, a whole bunch of worldwide chaos. If you factor in Venezuela and what we have done there, we have taken away 50% of our enemy's oil supply. We then plan on releasing 20% of that back into the market, which will then in turn tank the price of guess whose? Iranians' oil. So Russia's energy, other things like that will drop in their value. So remember the AI motive. You still need so many natural resources like gold, silver. That's why the prices are through the roof right now. That, and because of our failing money system, and everybody's getting scared and basically turning their IRAs into precious metals. But anyway, and land. You need land and energy also before you even think about AI. So that's always going to be an angle to obtain those things and to dominate. When it comes to Iran, you have to have a reality check. I mean, Iran isn't Iraq or Afghanistan. These people are not goat herders. We essentially turned those operations, Iraq and Afghanistan, we turned those operations in the end to basically encircle Iran. But Iran isn't anywhere near as poverty-ridden, nor do they have the cultural aspect of the third world Islamic countries as bad as the other two did. Iranians are essentially Persians who have had a very modern society and a successful monarchy up until they were controlled by radical Islamists who have pushed them back in time as far as rules, customs, radical policies. The Iranian people have been protesting on a pretty epic scale for almost 3 weeks now, and it's pretty much starting to get, real following the fall of Maduro. And these people were quite literally screaming Trump's name, hoping and begging that the United States would get involved and free them the way that he freed Venezuela. There are, of course, major repercussions with anything like that, any type of intervention like that. And being that we have tried to pull off more than once a regime change in an Islamic country, we should know that. Not to mention, they're out of our hemisphere. And on top of that, it's something that has Bibi Netanyahu's mouth watering, which can't be good. If we can't currently sustain America itself with our declining birth rate, our brewing of a civil war due to political violence growing, political tensions in general, homelessness rampant, drug use off the charts, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans a year, veterans on the street, unemployed, with a massive illegal population that's scamming the hell out of all that's left of what our children could have even hoped for. And I think we've sat back for years and years and just watched it all get worse and worse. So more to the point, Iran, as of 2 days ago, had its airspace locked down. The United States locked it down, and we had military on standby waiting for the signal. We were finally going to move on them for mass reports of the murder of protesters and rumors, soon to be, that they would be hung. And then Iran kind of took a step back, changed its attitude, supposedly canceled over 800 hangings. The issue with me on Iran is this. The goalposts keep moving. We obviously know they'll bullshit us because we were told drugs for Venezuela. So with Iran, it went from we got to go get them for enriching uranium over 60%. Then we got to take out their entire nuclear capabilities because they might build a bomb at some point or have them in a certain amount of time, which he's been saying that since, 85, 87. They're 2 weeks away since 1987. Okay. Then it went to we got to do something because they can't have intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs. Can't let them have those. Now we got to, and now they want us to go over there because they were attacking rioters that wanted to overthrow their government. Wait. Netanyahu, wait. Not that they were a threat to another country, or that they were wiping out an entire race of human beings, or that they were invading and taking land from an entire community of people. Not that we know anyone doing that or anything. My final opinion on any type of situation that involves United States going into another country is to stick with the unarguably wise founding fathers. What they said when it comes to foreign policy is that it's best to be sober and calm and rational. Never intervene when you don't absolutely need to. Their advice was to be friends with the world, but not to go out and get into entangling alliances, not to go out and look for monsters to fight wars with. Anyway, so there has been a lot of misinformation about ICE going around, and people, you're only making shit worse, man. And to the point where someone else is going to get killed. Please know and understand that these people are carrying out a mandate given to them by the majority of the American people. They were flooded in for a number of reasons. The Democrats, who lost all their voter base because their new socialist agenda and only have like the victim outcast voter base with a sprinkle of Karens here and there, they need the votes, and the globalist elites need the system to collapse so the liberal New World Order can finally take shape within America. No longer will you be protected by your current constitution if this happens. And you can think this is all a joke and corruption is long ago sold out this country, and you're right. It's not a joke, but the corruption has sold this country out. Politicians are doing the bidding of their donors, and their donors range from the military-industrial complex to big pharma to big ag to Silicon Valley until Trump. Our manufacturing industry had all been outsourced to cheap foreign labor and cost hundreds of thousands of Americans jobs and therefore their lives. NAFTA was a prime example of this. America has slept. And everyone else took advantage of weak president after weak president, starting primarily with Obama and the worldwide apology tour he made. We are just now getting our footing back. And one of the main things we need done is the removal of the strain on the American system that's being caused by the massive amounts of unvetted and undocumented people leeching off of it and simultaneously going out of their way to rip off the American people. As if that's not enough, the American people still stand behind it with only a small number of emotional lunatics that want to stop it from happening. And they do that through a lot of ways, not just like Renee Good tried to do. Misinformation and the spread of propaganda to make people question where they stand. You know, that is a big part of this. Social media, mainstream media. Like, you know, I've seen ICE shot a child, or that ICE is arresting people of color randomly. Tim Walz, with his very insurrection-y speech, he mentioned that they are going door to door asking people to report neighbors of color. No, they're not. They're not. That's not happening. Or that ICE is locking up American citizens. And I mean, in the end result, all you get is people not having faith in law enforcement that was dispatched to their cities to help them. And then once that seed is planted, that's when the hatred starts to sprout until you get a bunch of middle-aged white women that don't think they should be treated with any type of force or aggression because they are surrounded themselves with soft, liberal beta males with no testosterone or dignity, and they think they're privileged, and if they don't stand up, then these poor brown people don't stand a chance. They see them as fucking victims, and they seem to forget the part where they knew what they were doing, and in a way, I can see them as victims because the incompetent Democratic Party, they invited them over here with the promise of paradise and a free ride in exchange for a blue vote. They want to push for a civil war because that fits the narrative of big, bad, mean ICE hurting American citizens, being brutal. Anything to slow down the dismantling of the machine. And as you can see, the blue cities that have cooperated with the National Guard have seen no issues. Crime, corruption, all but dissipated. And D.C., San Francisco, Memphis, New Orleans, they're all examples of that. Let me ask you this. Why isn't there a bunch of like colored protesters, if that's who's really being treated so badly? Better yet, why aren't there colored protesters forming a White Lives Matter for Renee Good? I mean, where's the same energy we got when a thief drug addict that robbed pregnant women at gunpoint died? I mean, where was that? I mean, if an illegal immigrant had killed Renee Good, would everyone still be flipping out and demanding justice? Yeah. Yeah, actually, I bet they would, except in that case, the right would be wanting justice for Good, and the left would be protesting and demanding that her killer be let go. It's so sad, but it's so true. You know, Renee Good, the woman that for some reason is showing up on social media posts left and right back when she was still dressing like a woman and presumably still into men. No one is showing the shaved head, pixie cut, and dyke style that she died living with. I mean, I wonder why that is. It's all a game of perception, my friends. One thing Alex Jones actually hands down has had right, that without a doubt, this is an information war. Anyway, thank you for listening to me rant. God bless you all, and God bless America.